So welcome, friends and family of Paula Green. Whether you're near or far, in person or online, whether you're here now or watching later, we're all together to celebrate the life and work of an extraordinary family member, friend, and peacebuilder, Paula Green. Dear friends, I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to know you too. Dear friends, it is a pleasure to be with you, going through. I've seen you plant your colors upon a broken field and wash it with your sorrow, crying, let our earth be healed. And I've seen you dragged from courtrooms and thrown upon your backs, and I've seen 1,000 others come and follow in your tracks. And oh, such a treasure music, it flows for those who care. My songs are fruits of labors that go on everywhere. And though we've marched through dust and ashes so many times before, still I'd love to see you marching a million years or more. For our homes and lands they suffer with a voice that calls so loud. And as we march, our hearts that go in answer rest in the hills and on the grateful clouds. And though the guns and hungry shovels may wound our earth so sweet, she wears a special blessing in the marching of your feet. And oh, such a treasure music, it flows for those who care. My songs are fruits of labors that go on everywhere. Dear friends, I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to know you too. Dear friends, it is a pleasure to be with you, going through. So, talk about a spiritual power duo. I want to introduce you now to Paula's brother, who is a true Jewish luminary and innovator, the Rabbi Art Green.
Thank you, thank you. Wow, wonderful to be here. Wonderful to see some part of all your faces. Let's hope we'll see the other part someday soon, even outside. The first thing I want to do is, in the name of the family, thank all of you who love Paula and care about Paula's memory and were influenced by Paula for being with us. I want to thank the wonderful group of Paula's friends, Sharon Dunn first among others. I won't mention all the other names, but people who've worked so hard to put this day together. It's meant so much to me personally to get to know you all and to have a little bit of a sense of being involved in Paula's world that way. My first job is to introduce my very dear friend and student, Or Rabbi Or Rose, who's going to lead us in the chanting of the 23rd Psalm. You can find the transliteration on the back of your programs. Try to sing along, and then we'll hum it along afterwards as well. So, Or, take it away. Or worked with Paula, I should say, in the context of Jewish-Muslim dialogue, and Or is the director of the Miller Center for Interfaith and Social Justice in Boston at Hebrew College, and has been very involved in work, particularly on the Psalms in a Psalm season project. Or, it's yours.
Mizmor David, Adonai Eroi lo echzar, binod deshe yarbitzeni, al mei menuchot yinaleni. Nafshi yeshover, Nafshi yeshover, Yanecheni v'magalei tzedek leman shemo. Ki elech begetz al mavet lo yirara ki ata imadi sheyiftecha Mishanetecha, Shiftecha, Umishanetecha, Hima Yenachamuni, Taroch, Lefanai Shulechan, Taroch lefanai shulchan, Taroch lefanai shulchan, neged zorerai, diyeshaneta, v'shemen roshi, Dishanta v'shemen roshi, Yeshanata v'shemen roshi, Kol sirevaya, Ach etov, Ach v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai v'shaveti ושבתי בבית אדוני ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. Given the nature of this gathering, I just want to say one word of explanation about this psalm. It is, of course, perhaps the most well-known psalm in Jewish and Christian and Western cultural contexts because it deals with questions of faith and of fear and of death and the possibility of menucha, of rest. I want to just zero in on line 5 in Paula's memory. Ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged tzorerai, which in the King James Version, of course, and so many others, is a statement in which we say, in the presence of mine enemies. And contextually and for much of interpretive history, it's been understood as a kind of statement of puffery and of defensiveness, and of finger wagging, all of those enemies out there. So, with very mixed feelings about words and phrases like this, particularly in the context of celebrating the life and the legacy of a peacemaker, I want to just add that I hope and pray that we can continue Paula's legacy and perhaps reimagine that table, so that when we say Keneged Tzorerai, that we imagine God preparing a feast, that we can sit down at such a table across Keneged Tzorerai, across from those that have been enemies, and together imagine a different possibility.
Wonderful day we spent together traveling down to New Jersey and visiting Mom's grave, the graves of our grandparents and everybody else. And of course, we both found out again there's no such thing as closure to an open wound, but it was very important. This time, last week, I went down by myself because Paula was the only person I could call up and say, as a result of that. But she became very strong and very empathetic. If she could get through this, she could get through anything. And those couple of years afterwards were very hard for her. Dad remarried and Paula wasn't ready for it. It was very hard at home and she left home early and et cetera, et cetera. You don't need all the details, but it was a rough time and she got through it. But it also made Paula a very empathetic person, as you know. You could tell her about any suffering, any loss, any pain, and she could open her heart to it and absorb it. That's who she was. And that came out of that experience, I think, that came out of those years of growth that followed Mom's passing. There are people who suffer a great loss, not everybody, but there are people who suffer a great loss who just become open-hearted. That wounded heart becomes an open heart that never quite closes up and opens up to other people as well. Paul was one of those people. Her life was not predictable from when we were kids. I was a very inward, lonely child. She was a kid who wanted friends, who had friends, who wanted friends. We were relatively poor people in a world of an aspiring upper middle class community. Dad was a high school teacher and teaching paid lousy in those days. And he worked a projector at a movie theater at night to make extra money. And we were kind of on the edge, and Paula's friends had fancy clothes and were going on fancy trips when we were going on car trips to Echo Lake Park for a picnic on vacation days. and it was not the same thing. And she had a rough time in high school. Went away to college for a couple of years to get far away from home. Came back, had a hard time coming back. In her 30s, she married Jesse, David and Danny's father, and for a few years it was very good. I was a rabbinical student then, and they were in Englewood, New Jersey, just across the George Washington Bridge. And I think she was happy in the first years and wonderfully happy to have 2 little boys. And the marriage went sour, and that she had a hard time there too, and it took great courage to leave it. In those years, she started getting involved first in the civil rights movement in town. Englewood, New Jersey was a town that had a wealthy section and a big middle-class section, white middle-class section where she lived, and a black ghetto. And integration came to that town, and Paula became an activist and a question asker, and a pusher for what was called integration in those days, and the civil rights movement. And that was the beginning of her awakening, I think, to the sufferings of other people, and awareness that there was a world out there that needed her, and that she had to respond to. She then began reading psychology like furiously, discovered Buddhism in the course of it, and I remember being a rabbinical student and having long conversations with her about Hasidic mysticism and Buddhist mysticism and ways in which we were on the same trip and on different versions of the same trip. When she got that marriage, she took her name back. She took the name Green back, and I think that was very important to her. Some were announcing that she was her own individual person and was reclaiming that piece of her identity. She moved up to New Hampshire, began teaching at a little college there, and began writing a dissertation on Buddhist meditation and humanistic psychology. The rest of it, she met Jim at Inside Meditation Center, and you took it from there. They did their wonderful year of traveling and sleeping on ashram floors all over Asia, and she came back and said, this is what I want to do with my life, and she began doing it. She began creating Karuna, creating her master's program, creating her institute, and doing all the wonderful things she did. The two of us often had conversations about how we both became who we are, and what at home drove us. We were both rebels against a very secular, worldly, anti-religious father, a militant atheist. Picture Bernie Sanders, a generation older. The only questions in the world that matter are the socioeconomic questions. If we can relieve poverty, that's all that matters. And all this other stuff, all this other inner life stuff, psychology and religion and spirituality is just nonsense. It's just basically the opiate of the masses. Though that wasn't a Marxist. It was that kind of orientation. The real world is the socioeconomic world, and let's talk about that and forget the rest of the nonsense. And so Paula and I both, in our own ways, rebelled against it, but we also retained a lot of Dad's values. Dad was an internationalist, a citizen of the world type, very universalist in his concerns. He was a history teacher and taught European history and taught world history, cared a lot about people around the world, and knew things about what was going on in the world. The best thing he did for me as a dad was we were stamp collectors together, and that taught me all of modern history and geography with lots of his own liberal biases thrown into it as well. Paula was a person I want to say who never stopped growing. She was always moving towards something, discovering something new, discovering something else she needed to be open to. Discovering a new concern that was terribly important. It might have been in Vazny, it might have been in Rwanda, it might have been, of course, Hands Across the Hills, coming back here after the Trump election and seeing what she had to do in this country, and seeing the places in which he felt she was needed. I watched it all, of course, and was a sideline participant in it all with great awe, with great love and awe for my sister, my big sister, who became a very big person over the years. And I just watched it happening. I spent many years studying a Hasidic master who lived 200 years ago named Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav, who taught against all the people around him that great souls are not sent into the world by God, but they're developed over the course of a lifetime. Our souls are all the same. We all have human spirits. We all have human souls. The question is what we do with them. And great souls are developed by spiritual growth and and by exercising that soul and keeping that heart open. Paula Green was a great soul in the world. And I'm just so honored and delighted and happy that all of you were touched by that great soul in the course of your lifetimes. Thank you. It's my job now to introduce prayers and chants, of course, from around the world. So Joseph Sebarenzi from Rwanda is going to read Psalm 91, which is traditionally read at Jewish funerals. I must say he picked it without knowing that it's a funeral psalm in our tradition. Imam Vahidin Omanović is going to give us a Muslim chant, and Steve Kanji is going to give us, Kanji Ruhl is going to give us the Heart Sutra, the Buddhist Heart Sutra. Thank you for being with us.
Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Surely He will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. You will only observe with your eyes and see the punishment of the wicked. If you say, the Lord is my refuge, and you make the Most High your dwelling, no harm will overtake you, no disaster will come near your tent. He will command His angels concerning you to guide you in all your ways. They will lift you up in their hands, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. You will tread on the lion and the cobra. You will trample the great lion and the serpent. Because He loves me, says the Lord, I will rescue him. I will protect him, for he acknowledges my name. He will call on me and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life, I will satisfy him and show him my salvation.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
The heart core of the scripture of the great perfecting of wisdom, a rendering of a Mahayana Buddhist sutra. As a being of great universal compassion, practiced the deep perfecting of wisdom, she perceived that the 5 conditions comprising our experience of selfhood, our physical forms, our sensing and perceiving, our processes of discerning and awareness. All of these constituents of self have no inherent permanent substance. And realizing this, she was freed of pain. Oh, those who value knowledge but lack this wisdom should realize that the constant manifesting of physical forms is precisely the same process as the emptying of physical forms. A constant process of arising and subsiding, shaping and dissolving. And not only the physical forms of what we identify as the self are empty of inherent permanent substance, but our sensing and perceiving, our discerning, our awareness, those processes that comprise the self are also like this. And not only this self, but all things are fundamentally empty of inherent, permanent substance, not born, not destroyed, not stained, not pure, without loss, without gain. Viewing this process of emptying, we realize that the absence of permanent inherent substance in all things means there is no manifesting of stable, unchanging forms, no abiding self that senses or perceives these forms or discerns them in awareness through faculties of eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. No color, sound, smell, taste, touch thing to grasp onto. And because the process of manifesting physical forms is exactly the same process as emptying, subsiding, dissolving, and because there is no stable, permanent self-existence, thus there is no stable, permanent chain of causation in that self to drag it through ignorance into growing old and dying. And also no stable, permanent thing to achieve, called the end of ignorance leading into old age and dying. No stable, permanent self, and thus no self that clings to suffering. No permanent, stable causes of suffering. And thus no personal suffering that needs to cease. No permanent, stable path to liberation. No eternal, unchanging wisdom, and nothing that needs to be gained. Nothing to gain. And thus beings of great universal compassion who serve others live this perfecting of wisdom with no hindrance of mind. No hindrance. Therefore no fear. Far beyond all delusions of permanent stability and sustenance self of anything, complete liberation is already here. All past, present, and future awakened ones live this perfecting of wisdom in experiencing supreme, perfect awakening. Therefore realize this perfecting of wisdom can be summarized in one luminous, supreme, incomparable statement, and has the power to clear away all suffering when we proclaim it. And here it is. Gatte, gatte, paragatte, parasamgatte, bodhisvaha. And it means gone, gone, gone beyond, gone completely beyond, is to be awake right here, now. So be it.
needs no introduction, apparently needs to be reminded that he needs no introduction. Please welcome the beloved husband of Paula Green, Jim Perkins.
Well, Paul always talked about how can we widen the circle a little bit. And that was so key to what our work was. And what a nice being a preacher's daughter, I'm very concerned about this thing. What do I say? What do I say at this event? And then I think of Paul, of course, in prison and asking, and he says, well, just don't worry about it. The Spirit will put the words in your mouth after the judge has asked you his questions. So I decided I'd go with that, and I confessed to my son last night. I said, Dad, I'm doing this crazy thing. I'm leaving it up to the Spirit to be with me tomorrow when I have to speak to a multitude. And then I became very afraid because there's also that scripture that says, thou shalt not test the Lord thy God. How do I talk about Paula? So many years ago now, and our lives coincided at the Insight Meditation Society first, and then at the Peacebuilder. And Paula made the decision that I was her guy. That was the way it went. And to this day, I don't really understand why that is. And she told everybody that I was really a terrific husband. And I, as I evaluate myself, I think I was an all right husband. I did pretty good by her. But she kept a low standard for me. The miracle of love that I got to experience through Paula. There's no condition on it. I never had to think for a second that this woman might do something that would hurt me in somebody else's eyes, or would hurt me in any way. She just loved me. She was kind. She took care of me. And I wasn't so easy to take care of, but and I thought often that if it had been a perfect relationship, if I had not had psychological needs and developmental things that hadn't happened that needed tending. And she did that. She did it in such a way as to never hurt me. But there's a power thing there, and I thought that if I had been a better man, if I'd been a perfect man, we could have gone even further with this wonderful love relationship. But I was always also aware of Paula, that we were in this life serve. And we came at that from such different traditions, and we inspired each other. I think that the thing that is about her work that was so incredible was first this lack of doctrinaire. There was her lack of any kind of sect, doctrine, theory, school. It was all. She was genuinely in touch with the situations that she created for herself to teach in. Her job, as she saw it, was to bring. It was a new. I don't know if it was new, but it was a peace-building technique of enormous consequence, because it drives people or combatants down deeper than what they're divided over their culture, over their race, over their whatever it is, their economics. They're brought down to the point where they meet each other as individual human beings, where we find out that 99.9997% of us are all exactly the same. And so let's find that common space where we are brothers and sisters. We have been divided too long. The spiritual world that we inhabit is out of date, folks. The political world is out of date. We just need to claim our humanity, and that was first of all an effort to embrace each other and get rid of war. What do we need war for? We've got really serious problems to deal with. Paula's thing was that you don't give up. And she was one generation, and already I see a new generation coming on. She kept the fire alive. She saw the possibility of peace where there wasn't much of a real possibility of peace. And in this world that is just driving us to despair with its constant, don't have to say a word, she just kept saying, no, we don't have to do this. We can understand each other, we can be friends, we can love each other, and we can do this whole human life in a different way. And that's the inspiration of her life to me. And when we talk about Paula's community, I am so thrilled to feel it and to know that this, we're human beings, we're going to stand up, we're going to do the right thing, we are going to stop living this life-destroying life that has been perpetrated against our better judgment. We need to do better. And I think that Paula's legacy is that she shows us how people can actually do it. It's a technology for bringing us together. Yeah. And her last 5 years, were primarily concerned with the work in Kentucky. And we have a coal miner's daughter with us today, and she'll sing for us. And she has become such a dear sister, and symbolizes and brings into this room the promise of our common humanity. Let's assert it in the world. Let's not let them take it away from us.
Thank you, Jim. like to introduce our singers. Director Mary Kay Brass and her two choruses, the River Singers and Greenfield Harmony Chorus. But first, a little about their connection to Paula's work. Mary Kay first knew Paula in the 90s through her peace work, Paula's peace work, and Mary Kay's friends in Bosnia. Mary Kay was so moved by the work that Paula was doing in the region that Mary Kay decided to take the summer contact program, Conflict Transformation Across Cultures, a program that brought peace builders together from all over the globe for 3 weeks in Vermont. And as you're watching, I say hello to all of you. The year Mary Kay took contact, she suggested that her chorus could come sing for the program participants. At that time, it was Ot Latumbo and I who were teaching peace and justice songs to our participants in the contact program, aside from our teaching. I don't know if that is what inspired Mary Kay to offer her chorus to the contact program. Her choruses sing beautiful, powerful, inspirational songs from many countries, sung in their languages, often from countries represented at contact. Countries that know war, and regions in the US that know injustice. Not knowing what she was getting, Paula said yes. On a warm summer evening after a lovely dinner with all of us, the two choruses joined together on risers at SIT's International Center. Our contact participants, many dressed in their traditional clothes from their homelands, sat facing the choirs, backed by the rolling green hills of Vermont and the setting sun. Paula sat in the front row. The music began and filled the large space with such joy-filled sounds, coming together in gorgeous harmonies, as you're about to hear. Songs of the heart from the Balkans, Rwanda, the Ukraine, and of course the United States. Our surprised participants, hearing their languages, were quickly up on their feet, smiling, singing, swaying, clapping, dancing. And so was Paula. She only sat down between songs. It was a huge success. How many of you have been in the contact program and have heard them sing? After that evening, the choirs then began raising money in public concerts to offer peace builders around the world scholarships to come to SIT and the contact program. In exchange, Paula offered one member from each of the choirs to attend contact every year. And they came back to contact to sing every year. It was a highlight for Paula. All these things eventually led to Mary Kay creating a wonderful, inspiring, quote, music and peace-building camp, end quote, in Bosnia in 2016 and again in 2018 with Vahidin and Omanović, who you saw chanting and praying earlier. Once when Mary Kay asked Vahidin, what did Paula do exactly when she came to work with you in Bosnia that you want to carry on? And Vahidin answered, oh, Mary Kay, I want to be Paula Green. How many of you have felt that way? Jim is raising his hand. Indeed, he and many others have continued her work and will continue it throughout the world. I leave you with Mary Kay and her combined chorus, the River Singers and Greenfield Harmony.
we didn't really rehearse in this space, so we're trying to make it work. We're really honored to be invited to sing here. For most of the last 2.5 years, I haven't been able to run my choruses, but I did a little group this spring and got all these volunteers to eagerly sign up to come and do this today, even though most of them live over an hour away. So we were all honored to be here, and we offer these songs as a sort of meditation on all the beautiful words and on Paula's amazing spirit and vision.
No, I Each of us is part of a great chain of peace builders, and it's gone on since time immemorial. There have always been people working for peace, standing up for justice. And it's our turn now, and then we pass it on to the next generation. I was raised in a neighborhood that was full of people from immigrant populations all over the world, with a lot of consciousness about racial disparities and economic disparities. But to tell you the truth, as a girl and young woman coming up in those days, I had to fight for every scrap of it. And when my children were young, the women's movement started. And my life opened up in dimensions I never could have dreamed. So I credit the women's movement for giving me the courage to find out who I was and what I was meant to do in this world.
And I worked in New Jersey and New York City around issues of race.
I learned about facilitation in those days. I had never done that before. And we were sent around to work with school systems and police systems and hospital systems. And it was the days of integration to try to get people across these divisions around race and ethnicity.
And then when I moved to New England, I did some work as a therapist.
With 3 other women from the region, I started a feminist therapy collective. I seemed to have startup energy. I got involved in Buddhism, completely unexpected. I wrote my dissertation on the relationship between psychotherapy and Buddhist meditation. It was, for me, another way to reach my own mind and to deepen my understanding of human phenomenon and what it means to be a person living and breathing on this earth.
I started Karuna Center for Peacebuilding in 1994. Karuna means compassion. It comes from the ancient languages of India, from Sanskrit and Pali.
From the beginning of Karuna Center, it was clear that our work was going to be about bridging divides. Our first large assignment was post-war Bosnia, and the invitation came from a woman who had become a victim in the war.
Uvijek mi onaj zvuk telefona kada zazvonio su mi rekli da me traži Paula Green, da razgovara trebam šta ona može pomoći u Bosni i Hercegovini, šta ja mislim da bi mogla.
So on our first trip there in 1997, I believe it was, we did women's circles. And it was heartbreaking because the women would go around the circle, not the room, because we were outside in a refugee camp. They'd go around the circle and introduce themselves and say, I lost my husband. I lost my husband and my son. I lost my father and my brother. I lost 2 sons, just endless. And they wept. They just wept. And that's what was needed at that time, was to weep together. And we continued to dialogue. And after doing this for a year or 2, which meant several trips, they said, Paula, we'd like to talk to the Serb women. And I thought, that's pretty far out. Those were the enemies. Then they said, after 2 or 3 years of doing this, we want you to work with the educators. Because we think that if you can do for the school systems what you've done for us, Bosnia has a future.
And I've been back, and one of the people that I trained has opened his own NGO, which he calls the Center for Peacebuilding. And it's the next generation carrying on the work.
Well, I remember one of the first sentences that you said was, either you deal with this and what happened to you, or you will have your children and grandchildren. You will put them in position to deal with these things. And I just felt it's not fair that we would transfer our traumas and our hate and our anger towards on the next generation to come, but it was really up to us to start healing right away.
I learned that people are not divided, people have been divided. People have been divided for the spoils of war and for the spoils of power. And these people didn't hate each other, they were taught to hate each other. They didn't want to kill each other. They were related to each other. They were all intermarried and interwoven in cities that functioned for them, but they became divided by others. I learned a great deal more about the work I do now from that experience. because we were dialoguing across divides without my even having that label for it. I worked even before I started Karuna Center in Myanmar, then called Burma, a very divided society, now in big trouble with another military coup. We were called early to Rwanda. I was there the year after the 1994 genocide. Israel and Palestine is divided even with the naming. Sri Lanka, Nepal, Macedonia, Kosovo, Armenia and Azerbaijan, South Sudan and Sudan, India, Pakistan, the list goes on. And it's all about divides. But there are some people every place who have just a little edge of courage and curiosity. And those are the ones who showed up. And when I work in war zones overseas, I'm astounded by who shows up. But there's always, in every community, there are people who are curious about the other side and who want to mend fences and build bridges and share what's happened to them and learn more. The program I started at SIT in 1997. It's called Conflict Transformation Across Cultures. And my goal was to bring people from war zones together to campus for a long intensive 3 weeks, as it turned out, to meet each other. And they came from every religion, every ethnic group, every color, shade of skin that possibly existed all over the world. And the harmony in that room when people took away their defenses and sat with each other in our common plight, I think moved me more profoundly than anything else, because it was like a little United Nations. There were often 60 or 70 people in the room, and they were battered and bruised and war-torn and traumatized, and they found each other and built a community. And I can't imagine anything more beautiful.
Paula is not only our mentor, but I think she's a global mentor for developing a community of peace builders around the globe. So she is not only a pioneer, but also a mentor to hundreds and thousands of the peace builders, in which she has infused, I think, this sentiments, these feelings that you have to work for global peace.
In Rwanda, when they were setting up the genocide, they called the Tutsis who they were killing cockroaches. You can step out a cockroach, it's not a human being. When the US servicemen were training to kill in Vietnam, they were told that these were not humans, these were gooks. These are words that dehumanize all the words that African Americans have been called in this country for centuries. It takes it away from the humanness. It's really hard to kill. The Army has learned how to teach people how to kill, because killing violates everything you've learned since you started kindergarten. Everything about nice and sharing your toys and playing with others and don't hit Johnny on the head with your shovel, all of that we learn as little children has to be unlearned and relearned in order to kill. And so there are psychological ways that people were taught to kill, and one of them is this massive dehumanization. So trying to work with this and make sure that we're not doing this with the Mexicans on the other side of the border, or the Pakistanis on the other side of the world, or anybody else in our own community is really important.
Some years ago, my husband and I and a few colleagues had started something called the Deliberate Peace Commission. We were opposing one of the endless wars that our country's gotten into. And then the election happened in 2016. We decided to call a meeting in the library just after the election. The town is largely progressive. 85% of the people voted for Hillary. And we wanted to understand what had happened to our country. One of our members spotted an article online written by a guy who was living in Kentucky doing community organizing. And he mentioned the word dialogue in one of his articles. And so my colleague wrote to him.
When that email from Jay came, he read the article, he sent a cold email. I brought it to the people, and specifically to the organization called the Letcher County Culture Hub. 7 months later, we were driving up in a van of Penny's Kentuckians and me up to Leverett in October of 2017, and the work began in earnest.
I wanted to make sure that we began with topics that would bind us to each other, and I decided to talk about families, because we've all got them, for better and for worse. We all have families, and that would give us a common bond. We gave each person a square, like a quilt square of paper, and asked each person to depict some family story on it. And we put out lots of crayons and markers and ribbons and tape and all sorts of things. And it was kind of like kindergarten. But then the art also provided the entree into hearing each other's stories. 2 of the people in our group had Holocaust stories. 2 of them had been born to mothers and fathers who had been in Europe and escaped the Holocaust. And as they told their stories, they cried. How could you not cry when you tell a Holocaust story? And the Kentuckians were just completely flabbergasted. And then they told coal mining stories, and some of them cried. And that was as new to us as the Holocaust was to them. After the Holocaust things came out, one of the women said, "I've been taught to hate refugees and immigrants, but I've never met one. And now I'm meeting you, and you are refugees and immigrants. And if I like you, I guess I have to like them also." Which is the whole goal of this work, is to get it from the group to the society. I find myself saying, we can't dismiss anybody. We may not agree with the behavior, certainly with the extremist behavior. None of us would condone any of that. It's not about condoning. It's about knowing it's about something. Behavior never arises in a vacuum. I'm a psychologist. I understand that. I used to be a therapist in an earlier chapter of my life. I know what this is about. And it's there in all of us. And having the empathy and the compassion for others is the way that we take all that we've learned in this dialogue, all the personal transformation, and use it for social transformation and political transformation. So it's becoming an upstander. It's standing up for other people who are also being swept away in great stereotypes and generalizations. Dialogue, by its nature, is intimate and small. And in order to grow these concepts and these shifts in attitudes and behaviors, we need national and international publicity. It's this human heart that connects us and connects our longing and connects our sense of care for each other everywhere. So I relearned that with this group. Bridge for Unity is the latest project that we're doing on race and racism between Western Massachusetts, Beaufort County, South Carolina, and Letcher County, Kentucky. Each of the 3 groups was mixed race, and we had a 3-state race and racism dialogue that was very successful, actually beyond my wildest expectations. It began with a trip to a plantation-turned-museum in Charleston, and that, I think, bonded us very deeply because we were facing the history of enslaved people together. In building the new society, we have to use our imaginations, and we've done some things. The women's movement is probably the biggest case in point for us to think about, but there's food co-ops, sustainable agriculture, restorative justice programs, alternatives to prison, solar and wind farms, negotiation and mediation processes, the Occupy movement, the ethic underneath Standing Rock as a way of resisting, the Black Lives Matter actions, alternative health care, global human rights,
and institutional developments like the EU and the UN. So we're doing it. We're moving ahead. As we're taking down the old, we're building up the new. We need institutions and safety nets and communities of solidarity that include everyone, absolutely everyone, because anyone who is left out is the next spoiler. So I want to ask you to do an experiment for a minute. Make a circle with your arms and ask yourself, who's in your inner circle? Who's there for you? Parents, children, partners, friends, who's in there? Take a look. Take a look at who's left out of your circle. Who's not there? See if you can open your circle a little bit. Who are you going to put in? Who do you include this time in a little bigger circle? Who's still left out? Who is outside your circle? Can you go bigger? Can you go bigger? Can you imagine a full inclusion? Taking in all the people you were taught to hate and fear. Taking in all the people you have been opposed to. Taking in all the people you don't know, whose values may be different than your own. How wide can you stretch in respect and compassion? Thank you.
The song has a wonderful chorus. I hope you'll sing it with me. Starts with the chorus and it comes back. It's also an Appalachian hymn. Doesn't sound like it the way I do it. We are going down the valley, going down the valley, going to the setting of the sun.
So a few of us were just channeling Paula, who always had her eye on the group. And she would say, time for everyone to stand up and Olivia Dreier, and my task is to just say a few words about Paula's largest peacebuilding initiatives, the Karuna Center and Contact. Both of these she started in the mid-90s, so fairly late in her life. She was approaching 60. But I think what she brought was brewing and ripening for a long, long time. And you just saw in the film Paula, in her own words, speak so wonderfully to her approach to peace building. This film, by the way, that was put together by Laura Anderson, the longtime communications person at Karuna. But I thought I would add just a couple of vignettes of what for me illustrate, I would say, three core qualities, three capacities, talents really, that Paula brought to this work. The first was this absolutely extraordinary courage to dive right in to the most raw, deepest tensions that divide us. The second was this artful creativity to develop structures, exercises, processes to help us address them and move through them. And the third, which I think was perhaps the most important, was this absolutely infectious sense of possibility, that it was actually possible to transform these divides, to meet the other, even in the wake of war and genocide. I first saw these talents at play when I accompanied Paula to Bosnia in the summer of 2000. I was exploring, looking for a mid-career shift in midlife, and I wanted to see the work firsthand. I was completely awed, actually blown away. There we were in a room of Bosnian Serb and Bosnian Muslim teachers. Paula had been working with them for some time, but at that trip, they were really stuck. the Bosnian Serbs were unable to acknowledge the atrocities that had occurred, unable to acknowledge that the concentration camps, even a rape camp, was in their very city. And the Bosnian Muslims could not move forward without that acknowledgement. And I remember sitting in the room and feeling the tension mount. And I was like, oh my gosh, what now? Well, Paula turned to her co-facilitator and me and whispered, let's go into the center of the circle and just start talking about things that were done in our name as Americans that we are not proud of. And so we did. It was not hard to come up with them. Not at all. And then we just took our seats, and there was a long silence. And then one of the Bosnian Serb women started to talk about her deep sorrow and shame about what was done in their name, and to apologize. And she felt so badly that she had felt there was nothing she could do as it was occurring. Well, the logjam broke. It was a long, bumpy road ahead. It did not go smoothly. But that group actually went on to start the first bi-communal NGO in northern Bosnia. And I had the great, great privilege of accompanying Paula over the course of 2 decades and watching those talents manifest in so many different countries and so many different circumstances, and learn so much. At Contact, which she always told me she felt was her kind of crowning achievement, where she described she would just bring all these people together, 60 or 70 people from war zones around the world, all sides of conflicts, Rwandan Hutus and Tutsis, Israelis and Palestinians, Kosovars, Serbs, Bosnian Muslims. There they were all together, along with Americans, guided through these artfully created exercises and encounters. You even had African men from extremely strict Islamic cultures finding themselves in deep conversation with American women who were openly gay. Imagine it. But what really stands out in my mind at this moment was one evening, one of those international evenings, Susie, where everybody came in their national dress. They had set up little booths to show the work their NGOs were doing. And a couple of participants gave talks, very moving talks about their experiences, their work. And I remember just scanning the room and seeing these beaming faces, bright eyes, broad smiles, rapt attention. And I remember just having this sense that this is this little glimpse of the world we all so desperately want, but is so far away, and that everyone in the room at that moment felt it. I told Paula the next day how moved I was by that. And she said, her response was, yes, that's King's beloved community. It's so, so far off. But what else can we do but work as hard as we can towards it? And what else can we do? 3 weeks before Paula died, she and I began interviews for a book we planned to write together to lift up stories of reconciliation against all odds. 3 days before she died, she texted me from her hospital bed right after her lung cavity had been drained. I'm sure she was still attached to tubes. So sorry that she wouldn't be able to participate in this effort with me. But then with very detailed instructions as to how I could proceed. It was so, so quintessential Paula. She loved to start things, and my goodness, did that woman ever start things. But I think of her more than anything as, I think, a sower of seeds of this sense of possibility that we really can transform the most fraught conflicts and divides. But we have to have the courage to really delve in with full honesty, to really acknowledge the harms done, to listen openly to people's experiences that are so different from our own, perspectives so different. But then there is the possibility to discover, I think what you were speaking to, Jim, to this experience of our common humanity, which is there for the uncovering. What a gift that woman gave to all of us and so many around the world.
Shortly before she and Jim went to Florida, she and Jim and Dale Schwartz came over and had a meal, and Paula was talking about her work, and it caused me to get up after supper and play a recording from our friend Sam Gleaves. He always says it's like leaves with G, and you will want to know how to spell this man's name. He's a young friend of ours, musician, who was inspired by Joan Baez's work in Bosnia and made a song that Paula told the whole story about, so I think she related to it. Angel in the Ashes.
In his wake you stand, and to First of all, I want to say thank you to Carrie, who came here today, and her partners were not able to come due to a medical emergency. So we were very lucky that she came, and very grateful. I'm Sharon Dunn. I was a colleague of Paula's in Hands Across the Hills and in Bridge for Unity. And it was in the spring of 2016, and that was just 6 years ago, that my husband, John Clayton, and I met Paula and Jim. The 2016 election was soon upon us with an outcome that shocked and upset many of us in Leverett. I had a front seat as Paula, after a decades-long career in international post-conflict areas, shifted her focus to bridging divides here in the United States, bringing her vast experience and unique skills to work here at home. John and I were at the Leverett Library, where Paula and Tom Wolfe wrote on a whiteboard everyone's brainstorming ideas of actions we all could take to understand better, to make change. So many ideas came out of that meeting at the library. One of them was a reading group, a book group, that would read a wide array of social issues. And that group is still active today. Jim and Paula were part of it. And in Paula's memory, the group is putting in a tree at the Leverett Library, which will have its dedication in September. However, the largest outcome turned out to be a Bridging Across Divides group, later called Hands Across the Hills, when Leverett residents joined Letcher County, Kentucky, in a project still active now, 6 years later. Paula recruited us to the group. We need writers, she exclaimed. Soon we were at the table at Pat Fierro's house, where Paula organized 20-plus Leverett residents who did not even know each other, for the most part, into a team to provide homestays, food, transportation, arrange for 2 public venues for a 3-day weekend for people we'd never met and who had voted very differently from us. Beside me sat Sarah Pirtle, writing a theme song for Hands Across the Hills. Paula had a genius for organizing and galvanizing a group, and for designing a long weekend of experiences, as well as dialogue prompts that were neutral but would elicit frank and deep responses. Over time, I saw her drive for PR, public relations, but really, what that means was that she was committed to sharing the bridging work, the humanizing work, with the Leverett community and the wider world. She wrote op-eds, we wrote feature articles, we spoke at colleges, we held forums locally after each bridging trip. We created a robust website, the repository of our various voices, our stories, the arc we in Massachusetts and Kentucky journeyed together. Within a year of half startup, Deborah Snow and Barbara White asked Paula to help recruit a diverse group in the Pioneer Valley that they envisioned would bridge across racial divides. They named it Bridge for Unity. Paula joined that endeavor, recruiting, facilitating dialogues, and helping shape 3-day encounters in Beaufort, South Carolina, and Amherst. Be for You, most recently focusing on reparations, and HAP are ongoing today, transforming over time as groups must. Paula's final project with HAP, just this last October, was to create with Ben Fink a Dialogue Across Divides training project, where 25 participants arrived with their own bridging projects in mind, and some underway, and received training in facilitating dialogue and in organizing both of those areas. Half members joined the training groups for dinner and dialogue circles, sharing our experiences. Later, several of the participants told us that the training was a life-changing event for them. Paula was full of energy for all those 3 days, fully engaged in every minute of mentoring and sharing. We are currently planning a second Dialogue Across Divides training for additional participants. kind of bringing forward Paula's legacy. Jim and I recollected the other day, Paula was always at her desk working. In addition to TAF and Be4U, in these years she was frequently a consultant, facilitating conversations for towns, churches, and academic institutions needing to bridge their own divides. I miss Paula's full-throated laughter, her full-body hugs, the way she dressed beautifully for public appearances, the myriad ways she brought people together in her and Jim's home, always eager for serious, meaningful conversation. I admired her eloquence, speaking always about the need to humanize the other. Sometimes I wondered how she kept going with her fervor in the face of often intractable situations, abroad and here at home, because she did. I recently heard of a transforming metaphor, almost a visioning, that Paula offered her student Peacebuilders year after year. Suzanne Belleci heard Paula give this advice, and I've asked her to share it with us all.
Thanks, Sharon. I miss Paula too. I taught with Paula Green in the contact program for 19 years. And in the beginning, students would ask her, how did you do this? How did you create this? How did you know how much money you needed and what partners you needed and where to go? How did you know it would work? How did you know you were the one? How did you know you could do it? And they honestly asked in humility because they wanted to know, is it me too? And if it's me, how do I do it? So she asked the faculty, each of us, could you present your peacebuilding journey in about 10 or 15 minutes? And just take a Monday, and Joseph take a Tuesday, and Olivia take a Wednesday. Just spend 15 minutes to go over your peacebuilding journey. So people could see that it's just ordinary folk doing this work. And so some of you will recognize this story that Paula told about her own self and her own peacebuilding journey in her 15 minutes. And that is that she said, I didn't know. I didn't know what would happen. I didn't know all the paths. I didn't know all the people. I didn't know all the connections. I didn't know. But I did know there was a door in front of me. And I said yes. And I opened it and walked through. I couldn't know the rest of the journey, but I knew that life was inviting me to the door right there. And when I think about Paula and her work, I'm so grateful that Paula opened her doors. And behind one of them was you. I only wish that as you open the door before you, the door that's inviting you for whatever reason, whether it's peace building or enhancing love in your own lives, or enhancing goodness for others, whatever door is before you, I hope that you open it. And behind that door is someone as wonderful as the door you opened to our beloved Paula Green.
I could say one thing that we all have in common with Paula, and that's our fantastic stamina. One more song here, Sarah Pirtle and Gwen Johnson, please come up and...
First, a PS for the family. The spaces that are right at the house, let's leave those for the family. Let the family leave first, so they're sure to be right there. Okay, we're going to recreate the moment when Hath arrived. How many people here were part of either Hath or Be For You? Just to kind of say hello to you. And what's so exciting is Gwen Johnson is here from Kentucky. When she arrived with Ben Fink on that long 15-hour drive, her first impulse that night was to say, we're going to start with a song. We want to bring you here with us so you can feel like you were there, and please join in singing. When Jim said, will you say something about your love and feelings for Paula?
Yeah, use that one.
Thank you, Court. I'm really honored to be able to be here and honored that Jim wanted me to say something about my beloved Paula. I was an unlikely participant in any kind of peace building because I've been a scrapper all my life. And I come from a place of resistance. There's a famous lady in our neck of the woods named Ella Hall, and she said to live here you have to fight. And so that's kind of been my prevailing attitude all my life against the injustices toward my people and Appalachia as a whole. But when the proposal came to come, I thought, well, you know, if they want to know why the vote went like it did, I can tell them. And so I got on that van and came, and it's been some of the most enlightening, that and Bridge for Unity, because I was a part of that. It's been some of the most enlightening, earth-shaking things in my life. And Paula Green was at the core of all of it. And when Rabbi or Rose was talking about that table in Psalm 23, I've often thought about that table, and many times I was kind of that puffed up one he was talking about. Oh, okay. Maybe it was what I said, but anyway. That's my cue to shut up, okay. But anyway, you know, through Paula and her work, I have begun to want to come to that table, not as that puffed up one, look what the Lord has done for me, but that other person who is saying, okay, look who he seated at the other side of this table. And I don't think that would ever happen for me without Paula Green. And so that's what she's meant in my life. She and Jim have just become very dear to me, and the participants in HAT and the participants in Bridge for Unity are people that I'm concerned about and I am in touch with and I love dearly, even across divides. And so, you know, I'm just one example of thousands. Oh, where are dear mothers? They've gone to heaven a-shouting. Day is breaking in my soul.
Oh, where are our dear fathers? Oh, where are our dear fathers? They're down in the garden praying, and day is breaking in my soul.
Join us on the chorus.
Yeah, try it on the chorus with this. Bright morning stars. Bright morning stars are rising. Bright morning stars are rising. Bright morning stars are rising. And day is breaking in my
Well, there are those who've gone before us. There are those who've gone before us. There are those who've gone before us. And day is breaking in my soul. Bright morning star. And they send us light to carry. Yes, they send us light to carry. And they send us light to carry. And day is breaking in my soul. Bright morning stars are rising. Bright morning stars are rising. Bright morning stars are rising. Day is breaking in my soul. One more time, sing it for Paula. Bright morning stars are rising. Bright morning stars are rising. Bright morning stars are rising. Day is See you at the garden. Don't forget to carpool.